Real-world applications contain user in their context, meaning that server-side can be processing multiple dozens or hundreds of messages from different users at the same time. Currently, our application is not doing the same, as it doesn't have any deterministic way to distinguish to whom belongs the text or file which was sent from the client. We will be changing it in the current video. So let's dive in. We added the account ID through the request header in our expense controller, and we test it by running the serial command, hitting the expenses endpoint, and we could see that the account ID was present and it can distinguish both accounts that we saved to database, and they have different expenses, which is the valid state. Let's start from adding the request header to the expected argument in our controller endpoints, and we also need to modify the repository to be aware of account ID, and same applies to the service, as the account ID needs to go through the whole bunch of methods that we implemented earlier. And yeah, let's add it to logs as well, and let's modify the entity itself. So we need to remove uniqueness from externalId, as now unique will be the combination of two variables, account ID and externalId. And now we can add the account ID to the inbound message to the entity itself. Yeah, just passing it through the constructor methods. And yeah, let's fix the tests to have it properly working, and add some better logging around the application, the service in this time. In the processing facade, we also need to have the account ID, and it should be reaching our final entity, which is the expense. So the column, it shouldn't be nullable, of course, as the message, the expense should always belong to someone specific. And yeah, now let's just extend the expense controller, add here the request header as well, and instead of returning all of the expenses from the database, we will be returning now them querying the database by account ID. And yeah, we pass the account ID into the method. Now let's see what's wrong here. Yeah, this the array that is expected, and we give it there. And now let's query the endpoints a few times. Let's put some data into our database, and we can see that the requests were caught and that the expenses are working correctly. And if we look in the debug mode to what we receive, you can see that the account ID is being correctly understood by the application, and that the data which is being saved now belongs to a specific account, and well, that's what we wanted to achieve in our application, and specifically in this episode, that the account has its own messages now, its own expenses, so its own database entries. And since now our application is fully ready to have the simple UI or the server part, that is the topic for the next episode. Thank you for being here, and see you later.